Welcome to the Nucleus podcast. Today, we're looking at the nuclear industry on July 24th, 2026, a week dominated by the United States-Saudi Arabia nuclear agreement, escalating conflict with Iran, and the increasingly powerful link between nuclear energy, artificial intelligence, and data centers. There is a lot happening here, but let's start with the Saudi deal. What has actually been agreed?
The United States and Saudi Arabia have signed what is described as a landmark 30-year civil nuclear cooperation agreement. The United States Department of Energy says it creates the legal foundation for a decades-long, multi-billion-dollar partnership with American companies supporting Saudi Arabia in building nuclear reactors. The contentious issue is uranium enrichment. Several reports say the arrangement could permit domestic enrichment for civilian reactor fuel. President Donald Trump, however, has denied that the agreement allows Saudi Arabia to enrich uranium. So the reporting contains a fundamental tension over one of the deal's most important features.
And Trump then appeared to change the political terms almost immediately. The article says he insisted, less than 24 hours after the agreement was signed, that Saudi Arabia must join the Abraham Accords and recognize Israel. Is that a condition of the nuclear deal, or a separate diplomatic demand being attached afterwards?
On the material we have, Trump presents it as a condition. No nuclear deal unless Riyadh normalizes relations with Israel through the Abraham Accords. But the timing matters. One report says this upended the agreement after signature. That raises obvious questions about whether the condition appears in the signed legal framework, whether implementation is conditional upon it, or whether it is political leverage being applied after the event. The article does not give us the agreement itself, so we cannot resolve that. What we can say is that the public description of the bargain changed very quickly.
Which feels unusual for a deal carrying this level of strategic risk. You would expect absolute precision around what has been signed, what remains conditional, and what Saudi Arabia can actually do.
Exactly. In major international projects, ambiguity can be commercially disruptive. In nuclear cooperation, it can also become a security issue. Critics fear that domestic enrichment could make it easier for Saudi Arabia eventually to develop a nuclear weapon and could provoke a regional arms race with Iran. Another report says the proposed agreement omits safeguards designed to make bomb-making harder. Those are allegations rather than conclusions established by the underlying text, but they explain why the detail matters so much.
There is also a striking contradiction in the broader United States position. Washington is fighting Iran partly to prevent domestic uranium enrichment, while potentially permitting enrichment by Iran's regional rival. Is the argument that Saudi Arabia is different because this is a civilian program supported by American technology?
That appears to be the distinction being advanced, but critics plainly do not find it reassuring. A civilian program and weapons capability are not the same thing, yet the concern is that access to enrichment capability may alter the strategic balance. The editorials describe the deal as dubious, dangerous, and likely to embolden Iran. One warns that an arms race between Tehran and Riyadh could become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Supporters, by contrast, can point to a long-term civilian power partnership and substantial opportunities for American suppliers. The commercial and diplomatic attractions are clear. The proliferation concerns are equally clear.
And all of this is unfolding while the conflict with Iran is escalating. The articles mentions repeated United States strikes, American service members killed, Iranian missiles directed towards Jordan, and Trump threatening an underground nuclear facility near Natanz.
Yes, Pickaxe Mountain is described as a complex buried almost 100 meters inside a mountain near the Natanz nuclear facility. Trump has threatened an attack on it, while reports say United States bombers left United Kingdom bases after Prime Minister Andy Burnham approved their use for strikes. United States forces also launched further attacks against Iranian targets, including the Revolutionary Guard, missile and drone sites, and, according to accusations reported in some sources, a power plant. This is not a detached debate about future nuclear policy. It is happening in the middle of sustained military exchanges, rising oil prices, and concern that the conflict could spread into neighboring states.
Let me pivot because in other news this week presents a very different nuclear story. Away from the Middle East, nuclear power is being treated less as a security problem and more as the answer to a giant electricity problem, particularly one created by artificial intelligence.
That is the clearest industry theme. Artificial intelligence data centers require large volumes of reliable power, and nuclear energy is being positioned as round-the-clock, low-carbon generation capable of meeting that demand. The United States administration has selected Oklo and X-Energy for a $200 million federal program intended to accelerate advanced reactors for artificial intelligence data centers, with Microsoft and NVIDIA involved as technology partners. Reports of that selection drove interest in both companies and contributed to rising share prices.
Although share price excitement is not the same as an operating reactor, are we seeing real projects or mainly a compelling investment narrative?
Both. Some coverage is plainly promotional, and one article expressly warns against accepting big technology companies' public relations claims uncritically. But there are tangible developments. At the Savannah River site in South Carolina, Amentum has been selected to negotiate a phased lease for a 1 gigawatt artificial intelligence data center, supported by approximately 2 gigawatts of on-site generation. The proposal is to begin with natural gas and transition later to another energy source. That transition is important. The data center demand is immediate, whereas advanced nuclear deployment may take longer.
So even a project presented within the nuclear and artificial intelligence story begins with gas. That seems to expose the timing problem rather neatly.
It does. The same pressure appears in the United Kingdom. Delays to nuclear, wind and solar projects have squeezed grid capacity, leading to warnings that extra gas-fired backup is needed. At the same time, EDF has extended the operating lives of Hartlepool and Heysham 1 by 2 years to 2030, following safety inspections. Together, those stations can generate enough electricity for 4 million homes. Life extension is therefore doing immediate system work, while new capacity remains under development.
And Sizewell C is moving into the supply chain rather than remaining purely a policy aspiration. Boccard UK has a 4-year contract for critical pools, tanks and sumps, while Balfour Beatty, Ground Engineering, VSL Systems UK and Bachi Solitanchi are joining forces on piling and geotechnical works.
Precisely. Those awards indicate practical mobilization across specialist engineering packages. Similar movement is visible elsewhere. New Jersey has created a procurement pathway for at least 1,100 megawatts of advanced nuclear generation. The New York Power Authority is seeking proposals for at least 1 gigawatt in upstate New York, covering both large reactors and small modular reactors. Indiana is trying to build local support through an advanced nuclear-ready community program, and the United States is evaluating a framework for nuclear projects in federal waters, although no commercial offshore deployment is currently planned or approved.
There is a slight danger that small modular reactor becomes a magic phrase, faster, cheaper and suitable for everything from data centers to emerging grids. Do this week's stories support that optimism?
It supports strong interest, but not certainty. Small modular reactors are presented as physically smaller, potentially quicker to bring into commercial operation and, in the case of Thailand, theoretically safer than traditional reactors. Africa's renewed nuclear interest also includes small modular reactors because integrating large conventional plants can be technically and economically difficult. But those are propositions about potential deployment. This week's articles do not demonstrate that all these projects have passed the financing, licensing, construction, and fuel supply hurdles.
Fuel supply may be the less glamorous constraint underneath the whole story. There are references to uranium enrichment, conversion, high-assay low-enriched uranium, thorium-based fuels, and even extracting uranium from seawater.
And that is commercially significant. ASP Isotopes has entered a research agreement with the Texas A&M Engineering Experiment Station to advance uranium conversion technology. Conversion turns yellowcake into uranium hexafluoride, the feedstock required for enrichment. Clean Core Thorium Energy and Quadrant Nuclear Industries have signed a memorandum of understanding on domestic high-assay low-enriched uranium supply. A United States company has also licensed technology developed with support from the Department of Energy to extract uranium from seawater. These developments reflect a wider attempt to build a domestic fuel chain alongside the reactor fleet.
There is international momentum too. India issuing an engineering, procurement and construction tender worth more than 28,000 crore rupees for the Mahi Banswara project. Serbia targeting construction of its first nuclear facility by 2035. Vietnam preparing people for Ninh Thuan II, and African governments reassessing nuclear after fuel supply shocks.
Yes, and Vietnam is also expanding cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency in peaceful nuclear applications, including water protection and food security. Petro-Vietnam is exploring wider cooperation with Canada in liquefied natural gas, nuclear power, and carbon capture and storage. The underlying theme is energy security. Nuclear is being considered not only as low-carbon generation, but as protection against volatile imported fuel markets and rapidly growing electricity demand.
Before we close, give us the practical takeaways. What should industry participants be watching after this week?
First, the precise terms and safeguards of the United States-Saudi agreement, including whether enrichment is actually permitted and how recognition of Israel operates as a condition. Second, the risk that military escalation with Iran overtakes civilian nuclear diplomacy. Third, whether artificial intelligence demand converts announcements into financed, licensed, and deliverable nuclear projects. And fourth, the less visible constraints, grid connections, specialist contractors, skilled people, and secure fuel supplies. Thank you for listening to the Nucleus podcast. The industry's mood this week is data center-centric but geopolitically risk-aware, with overall sentiment mixed. See you in the next one.